Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Today we have a bunch of results over the past weekend. We had Springfest Vietnam as well as the two WGP events, one in Thailand and the Chiho Cup. Going to go through the results and just kind of seeing how the Springfest season tops off, and obviously the more interesting results for set 2 decks as well. If you guys need any coaching for the BCS season, my Metafy link is in the bottom right hand corner. Feel free to book a session and we can get started on your season. If you guys haven't already, click that subscribe button for all notifications on this channel. So going through with standard first. So first place was taken by Team Philippines. So they brought TWO ZORGA NADIR and Reziel. Immediately out of the gate, set 2 decks showing results, which is really cool. Would have been cool to see a Blank Maya in here, but you know, I think ZORGA NADIR is a very strong deck in the current format at the moment. Second was New Wave Alpha with Prism, ZORGA NADIR as well, and TWO. Third is Varga, Luard, and TWO, and then Vietnamese gang coming 4th place with Leonor, Luard, and TWO. So gonna look at the ZORGA NADIR list. It's pretty shiny. So this deck opts to run the Snail instead of roaming Prison Dragon, pretty much running staples of pretty much everything. So, you know, maxing out on 4 Snails, 3 Persona Rides, 4 Shadow Cloak. You're also running this grade 1 to essentially recycle back an order from your drop to hand. You also run the guy that essentially reduces the counterblast if the next time you would Alchemy Magic, right? You're pretty much Alchemy Magicking like pretty much Clouded Miasma and this to essentially draw you cards in the mid game, and then pretty much going through like, you know, your drive check orders. You still run 2 of the Blitz order for Big Shield, and it's refundable, right? Because you're obviously running the grade 1 Sea Breeze Abduction to be able to get back the Blitz order. And then obviously in the early game, you want to find your habitats, build a board, and then yeah, that's pretty much that, right? So ZORGA NADIR is a very strong deck. This is actually a pretty cookie cutter deck, or at least the framework of it is pretty much 80-90%. You can kind of rejig with like effect triggers, some of the orders maybe, but yeah, you know, it depends on what you kind of want to achieve with the deck, right? That's pretty much where your order decisions will be. So yeah, very cool deck. Then looking at the Reziel deck, that also came first. So this one obviously runs the new set 2 support, Nibiris. So essentially at the end of battle that this unit attacked, if you have Reziel, Energy Blast 3, put this unit into soul, draw a card, look at top deck, put it top or bottom. Allows you to essentially have a more aggressive mid game. You're essentially calling this, checking top card. If it's a trigger, then happy days, right? And then you're still running your Tayfault Wisdom order build, and then pretty much everything gets you counter charge with your Turnar. Sogawan is probably the best card ever printed in Keta Sanctuary, and then just like a bunch of everything else, right? So yeah, this is pretty much as good as Reziel gets, and getting a result here in Springfest Vietnam is very cool. Then looking at tri-regulation, so first place brought Jewel Knight, Luard, and Highlander. Second was Gurgut, Prism, and Rivier. Third place, Vietnamese gang again, bringing Gurgut, Luard, and TWO. And then Team Philippines again, bringing Gurgut, ZORGA NADIR, and Grora. So looking at the Rivier list, it's pretty standardized. So you're essentially running Loris. You're jumping first, right? You're jumping, depending on like, even regardless if you're going first or second, you're jumping. You're getting this grade 3 first. You're riding Loris. You get your 2 force markers, stack it all on one side, and then you're just pretty much multi-attacking on that multi-force circle. And then pretty much you ride into Riviere, try to get Salinas to bounce and call, and then yeah, that's pretty much how the deck works, right? You're playing extra starters to be able to fulfill the grade 1 skill. Being able to essentially replace that grade 0 for another card is really good. Red OT is broken in this deck because you're essentially multi-attacking multiple times with, you know, the unit on the force circle, right? But otherwise, you're pretty much going into Heltrada. Your first stride is Somni. Somni allows you to bounce the unit on the double force circle and call it back out, which is really strong. I versed this deck in top 8, ended up beating it with Katrina. So big shout out to Yongqi. He did pretty much everything until I got to my first stride, and then I just recycled PGs, and yeah, that was pretty much it, right? So yeah, their team beat us in top 8, unfortunately. But you know, really good to see that they came second. So yeah, very cool. So that is Rivier. Then looking at the Grora list, it's a pretty different Grora list. So you're playing in Largolf, and Largolf essentially finds you this Dover Spid, and Dover Spid allows you to, I guess, mill your opponent's deck. So put 2 cards from your opponent's top deck into the drop zone. So once you farm up right, you can actually farm up pretty well with this deck. So you pretty much grind your opponent down to like low deck, and Largolf allows you to recycle this, right? And then you place it down, and then you use Malik Mantis, put the Largolf into Soul, being able to recycle this card with High Class Moth, and then Grora essentially calls it out from deck and then mills 2 again. So pretty much if you're like 4 cards in deck, 5 cards in deck, it's over, right? Pretty much being able to have access to a mill 4 in the very, very late game is actually pretty stupid, right? Playing double Honolly to essentially gatekeep any multi-attack decks, and then just pretty much the whole Grora package, right? This deck is like the gatekeeper of the format. Pretty much without this deck, I think the format would be pretty ridiculous, but yeah, like let's be real, Grora is a pretty unfun card, but you know, it's a pretty cool concept how this deck kind of works, right? So yeah, I saw this deck in action, very, very cool. So that is pretty much BSF Vietnam. So jumping to WGP Season 2 in Thailand. So they had a top 16 breakdown with 3 Blangmire and 3 Benny, 2 Shunui and Varga, and then 1 of Youthberk, Leonon, Luard, Kyoka, Razel, and Unica. Pretty interesting. Then the top 4 was won by Shunui, and then second place was a Youthberg, third was Leonon, and fourth Luard. So checking the Youthberg list, this guy must have had a field day, like must have had the best day of his life. Youthberg really didn't get anything, right? Like other than the festival collection grade 1, that's pretty much like anything that's different, maybe like Biscotti. But otherwise, like this guy must have had a field day, right? It must have been their day, you know. Sometimes if you know you whack a bunch of triggers, like you're being chilling, right? You're having a good day, you're smacking your opponent, and they can't do anything about it, right? Interesting build though, because they run 1 Zest, 1 Tempest, 2 Tempest and 1 Gust. So minimizing on the revolve forms, and then adding like this unguardable grade 3 guy, and then having space for like obviously the dragon from Festival Collection, having 1 cat, and then 2 Biscotti as well. So pretty wacky build, not gonna lie. And playing red OT is pretty, how should I say, greedy? Not greedy, but I think very win more, right? So yeah, very cool list. Congrats to the guy who, you know, came second place with Youthberk. Then finally we have the Chiho Cup in Fukuoka. This pie chart is pretty alarming. This is just as strong as when Shunui first came out. So 10 Shouju Doji. This deck is absolutely insane. I tried the deck out in Vietnam. It was insane. 5 Shunui, 4 Varga, 4 Razel, 3 Michu, 3 Blangmai, and pretty much a bunch of one-offs of everything else. Then the topping teams. So top 4, first place brought Shunui, Varga, and Shouju Doji. Dragon Empire team, pretty disgusting. Second place brought Shouju Doji, Chaos, and Leonon. Chaos seems to be like a deck that pops up very, very often. Then third place finally sees a new deck come into the format. So Michu, Varga, and Razel. And then fourth place was a Blangmire, Dayusha, and Shamo. So gonna look at some of the lists. So Chaos, it's available pretty much in English. Everything is available, even the effect crits. I know that the effect triggers are like practically impossible to get, because I think it's like a campaign like an expo or the Bushra Global Store or something. So yeah, pretty hard to find, other than maybe like the Regalis piece here. This is only available in JP, but pretty much everything else is like available, right? You're essentially this deck does play the 2 Quen Lu. So essentially what you're doing is you're getting 2 re-standard Mikanis out. You put the double Quen Lu on both of them, or at least one of them, and then pretty much you just stack a bunch of power and your opponent can't do anything, right? Because it's practically unguardable with no grade 1s or higher. So yeah, very, very annoying deck, and sometimes it can just cheat you wins because of, you know, how good Quen Lu with a restander is, right? Especially in the late game, because you're churning through your opponents like grade 0s in the early game, and they literally have no grade 0s to work with, right? So yeah, Chaos, very cool deck. Definitely a deck that I'll probably try out very, very soon. Just need to grab my Mekanis back from my friend. Then Michu. So Michu is, I call it, and some of my friends call it, the Gorilla deck. And Gorilla means it hits like a truck. Like, so essentially on like Persona Ride, right? With Nokono in the back row, it hits for 51, right? It's pretty annoying. Then the Nokono swaps, and then the Nokono attacks for 38, and then the other side is like 40 or 50. So the drive check Nokono side. So this essentially gets drive check, and then pretty much it pumps like the side of this, right? Which becomes like 50 or 60, which is like ridiculous. So essentially what this deck does is pretty much it bombs stuff and stops stops your units from intercepting, which is quite annoying, right? I know that there's another card that isn't running here, and that is the grade 1 lyrical that is like, it was using the Eve loop, where you saw +1, you put 2 normal units back. It's not used in this deck, but I think it's a really valuable card, especially if you're churning through Persona Rides. Sometimes you actually get to like, you know, the end of the game and you really need a Persona Ride. Sometimes you can just like return normal units and then get a Persona Ride, right? You pretty much have a security upgrader, or, you know, the Immigra, or the grade 1 that essentially allows you to superior ride the Michu, right? But yeah, this deck hits like a truck, and playing Dark OT is pretty interesting. If you are pretty aggressive, you can probably look at playing Red OT. Red OT is, yeah, pretty interesting. So yeah, Michu, definitely a deck to kind of look out for. I know that Fukuoka is a pretty big deck at the moment. I know that Fukuoka is actually pretty expensive in Japan because of the magazine promo, right? But otherwise, yeah, very cool deck. Then the last deck is this Dausa deck. This deck in the early game is actually pretty annoying. You set up like a bunch of bases, right? And then your units just hit like a truck. You're playing 3 of the Dual Nation grade 2 to essentially find your set orders. You're playing the B Hero guy for counter charge. Yeah, pretty straightforward, right? And then you play very minimal of like your D-Robo pieces, right? So you're like running 2, actually you're playing 3, but you're only playing like 1 Die Battle, 1 Die Lander, and then 1 Die Dragon because you're already using it in the ride line, and then Die Lander, you're also running it in the ride line. You don't actually need max copies of everything, and then you're pretty much playing consistency cards like your Dual Nation card, your grade 1 Cycler to be able to find your set orders, and then your grade 1 to counter charge, because this deck actually burns through a lot of counterblast, right? And then you also play 2 of the Blitz Order, which essentially gains 10 for each rested order or something like that. Yeah, Big Shield is always good against guard restrict decks as well. So yeah, that's pretty much all the results we have for this weekend. Really cool results, and you know, going forward, it's pretty interesting to see how Lyrical kind of impacts the format. I think this is like the first time we've seen the Lyrical deck since the new set came out, and really cool to see Michu coming through. So hopefully we can see Fukuoka come through, because apparently that's like one of the hype decks at the moment, but I haven't seen any results. So yeah, very, very cool to see all the results. And yeah, that's pretty much it for this video. If you guys liked it, comment, pop a like down below, comment down below what you guys think of the tournament results and what really interests you. If you guys haven't already, click that subscribe button, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.